And we should be live. Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Frangos. I'm president of Web Direction, the online marketing agency, and also co-teaching a course on social media marketing with my colleague, Michael Procopio.
Hi,
And
Michael
he's here.
Procopio. Michael Procopio here. I'm an independent social media consultant and a social media strategist, and I also do marketing consulting.
Thanks, Michael. It's good to be with you again. And for our students today, we've teed up a series of thoughts and examples on B2B marketing on Facebook. And in fact, we're gonna look at one by the shipping company Maersk. And did I pronounce it right, Michael? Maersk.
I think so.
And also Marketo, which is a well-known marketing company on their own, and then Salesforce.com that most people will have heard about. It's starting with a graphic that surprised me, and I'll just put it on the screen and see what you think about it too, Michael. So, and I'll tell you why I said it surprised me. Basically, on the left, we can see how many B2B marketers are doing campaigns on Facebook and using it. And usually my go-to network is LinkedIn, maybe I'll just do something on Google, probably YouTube, arguably, and LinkedIn more so than Facebook. Google Plus, to an extent, in just my own experience, haven't done as many B2B marketing campaigns on Facebook. And Michael, I know you wrote a book about the different networks. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when we wrote the book, which was 2 years ago now, I think we had the same view that you did, which was that Facebook is not the go-to network. And with companies that I consult with even today, they're finding that Facebook is not the place to go. So this is a rather surprising graphic in this way. Now, I do think that's going to change over time as the younger generations get into business. They'll be so used to using Facebook that'll happen more and more. But it appears as though the number is much higher than I would have ever guessed. But we do have some very good case studies for you on how you can use Facebook for B2B.
Yeah, and let's take a look at those. We'll start with Marketo. Just thinking while you were talking about your experience with the book and so forth, about why people maybe aren't, and what I hear from clients myself is, well, all that's on Facebook are like my old high school, my family, my grandmother, and so forth. And what I've said to them before too, and I've said we still should do social media marketing on Facebook. And this is like you changing my perspective about how much to do. But because all of those people who are from your old high school, your college friends, and in your family, they all are either married to or mothers and fathers of or brothers and sisters of some of your potential prospects. So maybe that's exactly, I think, what Marketo and some of the others who want to talk about found out, that they are there on Facebook, and Facebook's you can take advantage of it. So I'll put the Marketo study up, Michael. So you found this one for us. Maybe you set it up and we'll talk a little bit about it.
So Marketo, and they're a marketing automation company, and this actually documents the experiment that they did on Facebook. So they were in the same situation of wondering, could Facebook work, and it ended up working out extremely well. So they put a form, which you can see in about the middle of the page, a free social media ebook, and then did advertising around that. And you can see in the little chart, as they refined what they were doing, their cost per lead went down. And this is one of the things that is is very positive about Facebook is the level of targeting you can do is unmatched in anything else I've seen. Um,
Maybe I'll flip over to that targeting
yeah, I was going to say if you
example.
want to show that.
Yeah, so what Michael's saying about targeting on Facebook, this is a recent ad I did for a realtor. Now it's B2C, bearing in mind that distinction, but we were able to target, he's in Las Vegas, but we know that there are people in British Columbia, Canada, for example, that might want to move to Las Vegas. He knows that and some on the ground research. We also know that people from the big cities in California are likely and have moved over to Las Vegas. So demographics, we decided to pick 29 and older, believing they would have be more likely candidates. Then this is very powerful. Interests. Facebook was able to target specific interests for people looking for real estate. We decided to target an education level, and you can see the specific points that we could pick there, and that did help us narrow things down quite a bit. What was I'll flip back to the Marketo now. The other point I would make about what Marketo is doing, and you'll notice they still have this up at the site, and the students and people watching our video can go there and click and see what this is all about. So you go to facebook.com/Marketo, Marketo, and there's their definitive guide to lead generation. And what's interesting is they changed the graphic. This is a minor tactical point, but it's important. If you look at the first graphic, it said free social media ebook in the graphic, and now they just say it under that. My mind is, my thought is, and we learned this from the realtor thing, is that these are down in a small row of boxes under your main graphic, which commands the most attention, so that what we actually did for the realtor is put an arrow and point them toward where they could search on a property search and maybe fill out a lead form. And my thought is it's always a good idea to think about a way to point people to where that primary form is. And maybe it isn't primary for them anymore, but when you click it, their idea was to advertise it, get them. Then they may have just I didn't see it in the article, Michael, but they may have advertised the actual, brought them right to this landing page. But it is on Facebook, which is another point. Not all of the studies we researched showed that they ended up on Facebook getting the lead, but Marketo did. Their lead form is right there when you click open that box. So pointing, they had very success. And you can read about it. You can go here and become one of their leads and actually read more about what Marketo is doing on all marketing channels. I don't know if they discussed this specific one, but I am going to open that and report on it. Michael, any thoughts on the sequence that Marketo took?
No, other than this, I think that this is a perfect example of how you can actually verify that a lead that you're getting is coming from, in this case, Facebook or a specific channel. And that's important because this will let you define the return on investment. So if you've invested, let's say, $10,000 in advertising on Facebook, you'll know exactly how many leads you got. And you know what the value of a lead is from your other work. Then you can define the ROI that you're getting directly from Facebook.
Yeah, it's so important, and we're going to look at Maersk next, and they put some, we'll see in their links to their campaign, which actually went back to their website. They put some tracking, obvious tracking URLs so they could prove out the ROI, I'm sure, for theirs, which they have numbers for, and we can look at that if you like, Michael.
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay. So here's the Maersk write-up. about the study. This is on a blog at econsultancy.com, and we can put the link in for our students.
Right.
And
The thing that's
there's the. Go ahead,
the thing
Michael.
that's very distinct about this is they did not use advertising, and interestingly, they are the #2 company for engagement on Facebook, second only to Lego. So what they did was they showed very engaging pictures and had a link with the pictures, little description that says, in this case, winners arrived, see what our unfreezing services are, and then they went through a multi-step approach where when you clicked on that, you went to an article describing it, and from the article you could go to a download form for a brochure about those services. And as Scott mentioned, that's a tracking URL, so they would know how many people went from Facebook to the article, and with their own internal tracking, they should have easily been able to figure out how many people went from the article to the download form. And from this campaign, they got 150 leads, and while 150 leads doesn't sound like a lot, in the B2B world, when you're selling services that are 6 and 7 figures, it doesn't take too many leads to make up for it. So 150 was huge, and that was what was stated by their CMO at the time, that was a huge number of leads for them.
Right, and it's a tactical point, Michael. You made you underscored the fact that they use tracking URLs, and what I'm looking at now is not only on Facebook did they run the campaign, but they also did. These are actually screenshots from Twitter, and if you notice, after mrsk.co, their domain name, there's 2 different tracking URLs there. They were fine. Their people were finally tracking exactly where the leads came from, and it would be a different URL, as I take it, that came from Facebook. And then in this related post, they kind of showed their conceptual idea of the social media to an article to download a brochure and a hot lead, and then their salespeople could follow up on it. So yeah, you're right. You know, I have a client that would be overjoyed with 150 leads because they're B2B to hospitals, CFOs, and there's a lot of mergers, and sure, there's a lot of hospitals, but 150 CFO leads would be huge for them. So, and they're thinking about Facebook this year, so
Yeah.
We'll report on that later. That leaves, unless there was something else you'd like us to talk about on Maersk, Michael, we can go to the Salesforce maybe.
Yeah, let's go to Salesforce.
All right. So again, and I guess the other point I would make here is we jumped from Maersk over to Salesforce is that their hot lead conversion was at their website, whereas Marketo's actually had a lead form on Facebook. So you have both tactical opportunities where you want them to end up is part of your strategy when you're setting up the campaign. So here's the Salesforce, and it's actually on Facebook itself, case study. Michael, I know you had some thoughts on it.
Yeah, so this is as Scott said, it's a Facebook case study, and here are the key metrics. So when you set up a campaign, and I think this is anywhere, but certainly on social media, you're going to have a set of goals, typically based on your past experience, and so the numbers that we're getting here are relative to the goals that Salesforce had coming into this, and they got 3.5 times the number of leads of their goal, and they got 50% lower cost per lead. So from their perspective, this was a hugely successful campaign. And again,
You know, I wanted to underscore that and ask you about your experience at HP, where you set the goals, and you've said based on other experience, What if it's your first time on Facebook, do you think? Would you just base it on other networks that you've been on? You try to find the most, or maybe you base it on other research.
Well, so I'll give you a perfect example. We did some testing with advertising of social assets. And for the first time ever, we tried a new ad network and we tried YouTube. And what we found was that with YouTube, we got less engagement, so fewer clicks, but our cost per click was much lower than our average. So we based everything on what's our average for our normal advertising. On the ad network, we got better than average engagement, so more clicks, and while the cost was slightly higher than the YouTube advertising, it was less than our average. So that became a new ad network to put into the toolbox.
You know, Michael, I guess just as a point to our students, a master spreadsheet with all past campaigns, and maybe if you're new to a network, just benchmark campaigns with an average cost per click or it could be cost per mil, which translates to 1,000 placements. Most are cost per click these days, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
And then cost per lead is, it's one thing to have 500 people click over, how many actually filled out your form, and that kind of goes to landing page optimization, but those would be key figures. Any other figures you would recommend students would start tracking?
Yeah, if you can get it, cost per qualified lead.
And
So
qualified would be the non-tire kickers who are actually interested in your product, and another way to say it would be a warm or hot lead.
right, so if you do lead scoring, it would be after you scored the leads and determined whether or not they were of value. In smaller companies that have direct contact with their sales force, it can be the sales force telling them, hey, this was definitely a qualified lead, whether you win the deal or not.
Right, and go back to the realtor example. On some of his forms, there's a drop-down box for how soon they wish to move, and if it's 2 years or longer, it's less qualified. Let's say it's less warm. If it's 2 to 6 months, it's a hot lead. So let's finish off with looking at the Salesforce results. It can be found on Facebook. We'll put a URL up in our class. You should know about Salesforce.com. I think everybody's heard of it. Here's a quote by their director of marketing that they're having real-time valuable conversations that build trust. So they're not just leaving it to a quick campaign and go and fill out a lead. They're actually having some conversations. Nice if you have the time to do that, because social is about conversations. And then tactically down at the bottom, their goal was to increase online sales, and they used newsfeed placements on LinkedIn as opposed to Maersk, which seemed to indicate that they only did organic sort of tactical posting, right?
Yep.
So you can buy newsfeed placements on Facebook. You can also buy what looks a lot like a Google AdWords ad that's up on the right-hand side and click on it, and there's a couple of different options there. Any thoughts on that there, Michael?
No, so I'd say based on the case studies, at least we were able to find, of which there are not a lot. It seems as though Facebook advertising is the most commonly used tactic on Facebook, although, as we have seen from Maersk, you can get a lot of engagement on Facebook in a B2B environment. You just need to put in the time. It's going to be pretty time consuming, but if you put in that time, you can get the rewards.
Well, and we have a recommendation we'll close with on some ways to do that, but I just highlighted something that I think is an important point. Um, Most of the time when you're doing an ad campaign on Facebook, people also like your page. They're just used to liking things. In fact, you can compel them and persuade them and encourage them to do so. And so a side benefit, so that's nice, you get the likes. But that also means that all ensuing stories and posts on Facebook will now show up in those like streams uh, of the Facebook users. So that's good going forward too. It's a secondary benefit, but it also helps out quite a bit. And that leads us to a company we can recommend you take a look at. There's a free trial version. It's called Woobox, WOOBOX.com. And the nice thing about it is they've made a series of, if I is that showing up on the screen, Michael? All of these
It
different
is, yes.
pop down. That's good. Sometimes it doesn't on Hangouts. So they've made a whole bunch of pre-made campaigns and apps to deliver them. So if I slide down here, for instance, if you want to do a coupon campaign, a sweepstakes, a photo contest, whatever, they not only give you one tracking keyboard in place to measure and initiate your campaign, but they also have apps that pop in on Facebook to make it all work and happen. With a poll, for example, will show up if you're running a poll, pin to win, and they actually offer some advertising on Twitter, and I think and pull the networks together. So, which is a point maybe we can end on, Michael, unless you had some things that you wanted to say about Woobox. Uh, I guess that whole range. I guess 2 points there, and see what you think, Michael. The range of different tactical engagement strategies shown on Woobox would be a good thing to think through in the very beginning, because in advertising on Facebook, you can advertise, you can promote a story, or you can do what amounts to a PPC ad, and with a couple of other variations. Woobox adds a whole other list of types of promotions, and you saw there was one where they were tying in Twitter, and I guess that was the other point. So the range of promotions at the outset and strategies for that. Point number one, to get your thoughts, Michael. And point number two is, if you're going to do it on Facebook, there's probably consideration, as Maersk did, of tying in the other networks.
Yeah, I think one of the key things on Facebook is you've got to be much more engaging on Facebook than other networks. And I think it's because that's what it is that's going to grab somebody and his attention and get them there, because there's just so much going on in Facebook.
And what I hear you saying is the behavior and expectation is different from network to network. And of course, Twitter's quieter in a way, maybe would be one way to say it.
Yep.
Well, good. Any last thoughts that you'd like to toss in about Facebook B2B?
No, I think it's becoming a well, actually, one, yes. So one technique that I know of that has worked for people in B2B is using Facebook to warm up a lead. And my publisher does this, and the way that he does it is if there's somebody that he wants to talk to, he'll follow them on Facebook, and then periodically, when he sees something interesting that they've posted, he'll like it. When that happens, of course, the other person sees that so-and-so has liked your post. And after doing that for a while, the person comes to recognize his name, and then he will go over to LinkedIn to make an actual direct connection. But by that point, he's no longer an unknown. He's somebody who the person has a feel for. Oh, I remember this person's name. He's liked me on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way to. It would be extremely hard to measure, but it's a good use of Facebook for warming up people for sales lead.
Michael, we're seeing the same thing, and as we talked about before, mostly I've been doing it on LinkedIn, but I'm going to try it on Facebook. And we've seen it with our clients too, where there's kind of a warm up period. They're not a lead until you connect to them and talk to them and sort of slowly become get into their awareness and maybe be seen as a valuable contact or expert. And we've primarily been doing that via LinkedIn groups. But and we didn't touch on that, but there are business related groups on Facebook, and certainly that makes a lot of sense. That your first step is never recommended to just start trying to sell people something in social media. That
Definitely.
you should be your primary is to be social and talk to them and make a connection and get them to know who you are and what you're about. And then there's a period of time before you put them into Salesforce or the CRM of choice, and then start sending them, with their permission, of course, start sending them maybe a little more sales material at that point. But there's kind of a gestation period. Of how long do you think, Michael? It just depends
Well,
on the
I don't think
people.
it's as much how long as how many interactions you've had with them. So if you've met somebody and you've had, a number of interactions, then you're in a much better place to connect with somebody, and then the next thing they see from you is, will you, can I talk to you about buying XYZ? That really, really puts people off. However, if it's um, connected with you, and then I've shared some articles with you that you think might be interesting to that person, and you know this because you've been following them, and you know the kinds of things that they're interested in, and then 10 interactions down the line, you say, by the way, and assuming they've been interacting back with you, thanking you for the articles or whatever it is, then I think you've got the person to a point where you can approach them.
Yep. Good. So we'll end that here, and just a note to the students: do ask us questions in the course. Rethinking through your question is good for us and see what you're wondering about. It also gives you another way to sort of digest the course material, and that's what the quiz that we'll have one or two quizzes in the course. Another way to help you think through the material, review, and lock in your learning. Um, and with that, we'll end this discussion on using LinkedIn for B2B marketing. Well, hello everyone. Scott Frangos here again, and you see I'm holding a Portland mug. I live near Portland, Oregon. Pleased to be an instructor in our course, and I want to tell you two ways you can find our courses, and also give you a nice discount coupon for our courses. So, first of all, the courses themselves are on a platform called udemy.com. And I'm currently teaching a course on WordPress content marketing power. And you should be able to see on your screen now a nice discount coupon if you're a WordPress marketer, you want to learn some advanced tactics and techniques. By all means, use the coupon in this video right at the bottom here. The other one that's part of the video that you just watched is Social Media Marketing Power with Michael Procopio, myself, and Julie Hume. It's in draft mode if you see the little orange on the screen, because it's targeted to be done in the first half of 2014. And you can also find our courses and a bunch of other great marketing courses at collegeofmarketingpros.org, where Michael, Julie, and I are on the faculty. And I'm just going to scroll down on the screen and show you some of the courses ranging from copywriting, social media, some other social media marketing. There's my existing course on WordPress. I noticed that our social media marketing power course is coming up soon, and Google AdWords, Twitter advertising, LinkedIn, which includes some LinkedIn advertising. You want to learn more about advertising on Facebook? There's a couple of courses on that, and we'll touch more on that in our course. And all the way down to creating awesome videos, funnel optimization, and some of the A/B testing you can do on Google and using other tools. So on the screen now, there should be a nice discount code for you to use in our social media marketing course when it becomes live. You can go over to collegeofmarketingpros.org and just sign up there and make sure that you're on the list for getting different promotions and codes and coupons, and we'll have a big launch party and celebration for you there. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Scott Frangos. I look forward to seeing you in the social media marketing course.